Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melissa Siegel. I'm a professor of migration studies, and this is a channel about all things migration. And today we are going to be talking about resettlement, and specifically resettlement after displacement. So in a previous video, I have actually talked about durable solutions to displacement or longer term solutions to displacement, specifically refugees. And those three areas are resettlement, return, and local integration. But in this video, I'm going to talk specifically about resettlement. So let's jump right in and get started. We're first going to talk about what resettlement is. Then we'll also talk about the process of resettlement and the stages of resettlement. And then, of course, I do have some other videos on the channel that are a nice follow-up to this video that I'll tell you about at the end, and make sure to also link in the description below. So first of all, what is resettlement? So in general, resettlement is the transfer of refugees from a country of asylum to another country or another state that basically has agreed to take them in or to admit them and grant them permanent settlement in that new country. So this is mainly for refugees in a protracted situation and those that are particularly vulnerable. So what does protracted mean? In general, this is really looking at people who have been displaced for longer periods of time. And this now is intended to be a permanent solution for these people who are granted resettlement. Now, what is the process of resettlement? How does resettlement work? So in general, resettlement is a process that is done largely by UNHCR, at least in the first stages of the process. And UNHCR is the UN Refugee Agency. So UNHCR screens and submits refugees for resettlement to countries that have agreed to take in people who are going to be resettled, and they usually set quotas every year. So then basically a UNHCR officer or a refugee protection officer also does a further interview and review of the case before it is finally verified for resettlement. Now, countries globally pledge often a certain number of places for resettlement of refugees each year. Now, this is really a minority of countries around the world. Countries that are known more for doing this and have for longer periods of time are countries like Canada, Sweden, and the United States, but also some other countries in Europe or also Australia at some point. But there is, and I'll come back to this later, we do know that there is a big disconnect between refugee resettlement needs and the number of places that countries pledge every year to take in people. So basically UNHCR suggests refugees to each country to meet that country's specified preferences, because some countries do have different preferences for the kinds of refugees that they are willing to resettle. It might be a preference for refugees from a specific country or refugees with a specific background or some kind of socio-economic background. So countries still can make those decisions for themselves. And then the individual countries initiate their own process for the actual resettlement once that is cleared. So what are the UNHCR resettlement submission criteria? So they're basically looking for refugees that are in serious need of legal or physical protection. They're looking or giving more priority to survivors of torture and violence, those that also have medical needs, or women and girls at risk. There's also preference put on family reunification, and also making sure that they can resettle children and adolescents at risk. And this is particularly important also with regard to resettlement criteria is if there's really a lack of alternative durable solutions for these individuals or families. So if they don't really see local integration as a real possibility for the refugee, or being able to return to their original country of origin. Now, if we look at resettlement over time, here you can see between 2013 and 2016 that we saw, a number of submissions from UNHCR, but less departures. And we generally see that every year. So UNHCR submits more people for resettlement each year than actually end up departing in that year. And you can see, 2013-14, around 100,000 submissions were put in, but only around 70,000 people actually left. We also saw higher numbers in 2015 and 2016. And then once we come to 2017, 18, and 19, the numbers are already getting lower. And then in 2020 and in 2021, we see much lower numbers both for submissions and for departures. And this has very much to do with the global pandemic that has made it more difficult to do resettlement during this period. Now we can also look at submissions by category. So what are the main categories that people are being submitted for being able to have resettlement? So the main one is really this legal and physical protection needs. Then it's survivors of violence or torture. Then we see women and girls that are at risk, then children and adolescents at risk, then those that have medical needs. And then around 5% are just people who have a lack of foreseeable alternatives to durable solutions. So really the biggest categories here are the legal and physical protection needs and survivors of violence and torture. Now we can also look at where most resettlees are coming from and what are the main countries that they are going to for resettlement. So in 2021, between January and November, the main countries for destination for resettlement were the United States, Canada, Sweden, Germany, and Norway, and then a number of other countries, but these were the most important countries. Historically, these are also some of the most important countries for resettlement. And now, what are the main countries of origin for these people? So the majority are coming from Syria, and then that's followed by the Democratic Republic of Congo, Eritrea, Sudan, and Somalia. So these are their original countries of origin, but many of them are actually being resettled from countries where they have been in a kind of intermediate period. So maybe they were already in Turkey or in Lebanon or Jordan or Rwanda or Tanzania or another country, and they're actually being resettled from camps there where we don't see durable solutions for them to be able to have in those countries, and now they're being transferred to a third country. So there are a number of stages in the refugee resettlement process. First, there's the status determination that UNHCR does to see if this is a good candidate for resettlement. Then the country abroad, the resettlement country, has to accept them. Then there's a whole pre-departure orientation for that person on what to expect through the process and what their new country is going to look like. Then there is the reception in that country of destination. And then, of course, there is the integration process. Now, as I mentioned previously, there is a really big disconnect between the number of refugees that receive resettlement and those that actually need resettlement every year. And we know that often less than 1% of global refugees actually receive resettlement. So this is really just a drop in the bucket when we talk about long-term or durable solutions. Now, if you're interested in Canada specifically, which is a country that does quite a lot of resettlement and has over time, I have a whole video on Canada's private sponsorship system, which is quite particular to the context. So Canada agrees to resettle a number of people every year from the government's perspective, but they also have a private sponsorship scheme where additional people can be resettled every year through this private or community sponsorship schemes. So you can have a look at that video if you're interested. I'll make sure to put it here and link it in the description below, and also be on the lookout for another one of my videos where I look at other countries who have followed Canada's lead and are also doing more community sponsorship and not only national government sponsored programs and regimes. So I hope this just gave you a quick look at what resettlement is as one of the current durable solutions. I also have another video on my channel where I do look at all of the durable solutions or long-term solutions that we currently have for refugees and why they're not working as well as we would like to see them work. So you can check that out here. Again, I'll link it in the description below. If you have any questions, comments, make sure to put those also in the comment section. If you like this video, of course, give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos that I upload every week on different migration topics. And I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.